Naliaka Aking sat in the third row of a hall wedding wearing a dark teal-green dress, watching her fiancé kiss her younger sister beneath a white floral arch string. Lights flickered overhead. Guests rose to their feet. Her mother pressed a hand to her heart like she was witnessing something sacred. What Naliaka didn't know was that the most dangerous man in the city was standing 30 feet away, watching her with the kind of stillness that belongs to men who never have to raise their voice. He wasn't there for the bride. He wasn't there for the groom. He was there for the woman in the third row who was bleeding in plain sight and refusing to fall. And before this night is over, Naliaka is going to learn something that will rewrite everything she thought she understood about her own life. The difference between a man who drains you and a man who sees you. But to understand why Du Hyunjae, one of the most feared men in organized crime, would walk into a wedding uninvited just to stand witness for a woman he met only once, we have to go back. Back to the moment Naliaka made a decision in an operating room that saved his life and unknowingly changed the course of her own. If this story is for you, if you have ever been the strong one for so long that people forgot to ask if you were okay, stay with me. Because this one is yours. 8 years ago, Naliaka thought she had chosen well. Instead, she had chosen a man who would spend the next 8 years studying exactly how much she could give before she noticed it was gone. But we are not starting there. We are starting here. At the end. Or what Naliaka believed was the end. The ceremony was almost over. She made herself applaud. The sound felt wrong, hollow, like her palms were going through a motion her body no longer believed in. A single tear slipped down her cheek, not because she still loved Alex, but because she was watching the public celebration of her own erasure. Every vow he spoke, she had already heard, whispered in her apartment, in her car, across a kitchen table after a double shift when she was too tired to know she should have been asking for more. Every promise of forever was a lie she had organized her entire life around. She was 31 years old, a trauma surgeon at one of the most demanding hospitals in the city. She had been in that building for rotating 12-hour shifts, days, nights, holidays, the kind of schedule that turns a person's social life into a memory, while Alex cycled through a consulting firm, a tech startup, and 2 business ventures that she quietly funded without being asked. She paid the deposit on their apartment. She co-signed his car. She showed up to his networking events in heels after 16-hour shifts because he said her presence made him look established. She believed in him with the specific, exhausting faith of a woman who has been told her whole life that her strength is her most attractive quality. The moment he landed his first major client, the moment the account cleared and his name was on a contract with real numbers, he ended the engagement. No conversation. No warning. Just a calm, rehearsed speech about growing in different directions, and then silence. 3 months later, Chloe called to say she had something to tell her. Naliaka already knew. She had known since she'd seen the way Alex looked at her sister at Christmas. She came to this wedding because her mother, Celestine, had called 3 times in 1 week. Nayli, people will talk. You are the strong one. Chloe needs this day to be peaceful. Do it for the family. So here she sat, in the third row, in the dress she had picked out herself because she refused, absolutely refused, to look diminished. She was going to look beautiful. She was going to look like a woman who had survived something and was still standing. She just hadn't expected how much the standing would cost her. The hall was full. A string quartet played something soft and expensive. The wedding photographer moved through the crowd with practiced ease, kneeling to capture the kiss from 3 angles, tilting his lens toward the arch, toward the guests, toward Celestine dabbing her eyes with a cream-colored handkerchief and beaming like she had just witnessed a miracle. Maybe for her she had. Naliaka told herself she only needed to get through the reception. Just the first dance and the toasts and the cake, and then she could get into her car and drive to her apartment and sit in the quiet and finally, let herself feel the full weight of all of it. Just a few more hours. Just a few more hours. What Naliaka could not see from the third row was the man near the edge of the hall. He stood slightly apart from the other guests, closer to the hall wall than to the crowd, hands in his pockets, posture unhurried. His suit was black and impeccably cut, the kind that did not come off a rack. Sharp features. Black hair swept back in a clean, polished line. He looked like a man who had walked into rooms far more dangerous than this one and found them unremarkable. But his eyes had not moved from Naliaka since the ceremony began. His name was Fiancé. He was not supposed to be here. Alex had been pursuing a meeting with him for the better part of 4 months, a commercial development proposal, glass and steel, a city skyline view, the kind of pitch that looks impressive in a slide deck and collapses under actual scrutiny. Fiancé had declined twice. The numbers were constructed to impress, not to hold. But Alex was persistent in the way of men who mistake confidence for confidence, and 3 weeks ago he had sent a mass invitation to every contact in his network, 200 people he was trying to convert into an audience, along with a full-color wedding program, photographs, family bios, a guest list. Hyunji's assistant had pulled it from the discard file and set it on his desk without explanation. Under the heading Bride's family, he saw the name. Chloe Akying, sister of Naliaka Akying. He had opened his laptop before he consciously made the decision to do so. He pulled public records, a medical license, a marriage certificate, a dissolution filing. He looked at the dates. He looked at the name on the dissolution. Alex. Hyunjae closed the laptop, sat for a long moment, and then told his driver to change the route. 2 years ago, Naliaka Akying had been the attending surgeon on a case that the hospital's chief of staff had quietly recommended they deprioritize. The patient had arrived with a gunshot wound and the kind of background that made people in institutions make calculations. Naliaka had not made a calculation. She had operated for 4 hours on a man she did not know, with the focused, relentless precision of someone who did not accept the premise that any person's life was less worth saving than another's. He had survived. He had never forgotten. He had spent 2 years trying to learn her name. The ceremony ended. Guests stood, exhaled, began moving toward the reception area where warm light and music waited. Naliaka stood too. She smoothed her dress with both hands. She straightened her posture to the particular height she carried when she needed to look like she was fine. She began walking, not toward the reception tent, but toward the hall gate. The parking lot was just beyond it. She had survived. She could leave now. She had done what was asked of her. She could go. She was almost through the gate when she heard her name. Not Naliaka. Her full name. Both syllables of her first name, precise, unhurried, like it had been practiced. She turned. He was standing just inside the hall wall, partially in shadow and partially in the warm spill of string lights. Black suit. Hands in his pockets. Watching her with an expression that was not pity and not curiosity, but something she did not have an immediate word for. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice careful, the professional composure that never fully left her. "Do I know you?" "You did," he said. 2 years ago. A level 1 trauma center. A gunshot wound. You were the only surgeon in that room who didn't walk away. The memory arrived in pieces, the way trauma memories do. A man on a table. Blood pressure crashing. The attending beside her saying the words that surgeons sometimes say when they have already made a decision about a person before the surgery begins. And her own voice, steady and final, "We are not stopping. Begin the transfusion." "I remember," she said quietly. "My name is Hyunjae." He did not move closer. He did not perform warmth. He simply stood there, present and still, like a man who had learned that stillness was its own form of respect. "I have been trying to locate you for 2 years. I did not expect to find you here." She looked at him, really looked. "Why are you here?" "The groom invited me. A business proposal I declined." He kept the correspondence open. A brief pause. "When I saw your name in the wedding program, I understood what this event actually was. I came to see that you were not alone." Something tightened in her throat. She would not call it gratitude yet. She would not call it anything yet. "I don't need anyone to come and witness my humiliation," she said. "That's not what I came to witness." He reached into the interior pocket of his jacket and produced a card, matte black, minimal, a name and a number in clean embossed type. 2 years ago you told me, through your actions if not your words, that my life was worth the fight. I am here to extend the same position to you. You are not invisible, Dr. Akying. You are simply surrounded by people who benefit from you believing that you are." He held the card out. She looked at it for a long moment. I'm not asking you to decide anything tonight, he said. I'm asking you to keep this. In case there comes a moment when you want someone in your corner who is not afraid of the people who hurt you. She took it. Her fingers were steadier than she expected them to be. What do you want from me? She asked. His expression shifted something that might have been the closest he came to warmth. I want you to know that someone remembers, he said. What you did, what it cost you to do it, and what you deserve for having done it. Then he turned and walked back toward the reception, unhurried, disappearing into the golden light and the music and the crowd, as if he had never been there at all. Naliaka stood at the hall gate holding a card she hadn't asked for and could not bring herself to put down. Behind her, the string quartet played something soft and triumphant. Champagne glasses caught the light. Her mother laughed at something someone said near the wedding cake. The evening continued, perfectly, beautifully, without her. And for the first time in 8 years, something quiet shifted somewhere beneath the composure. Not hope. Not yet. But the first faint outline of the question that comes just before it. What if I stopped making it easy for them? She didn't know yet that the man who had just walked away from her was one of the most feared figures in organized crime on this side of the country. She didn't know yet what was waiting for her on her phone, the credit alert, the fraudulent accounts, the signature that was not hers on a loan she never took. She didn't know yet that the life Alex was currently celebrating had been funded on the financial wreckage of hers. She would know all of it by midnight. And when she did, when the full weight of what had been done to her finally landed, she would open her contacts, find the number on the card, and make the call that changed everything. But right now, she simply stood in the hall, alone and not alone, holding something that felt like the first honest thing anyone had offered her in years. Have you ever had someone show up for you at exactly the moment you had stopped expecting it? Drop a comment and tell me, because Naliaka is about to find out what it means to be seen by someone who is not afraid of what they see. And I want to know if you would have made the same choice she's about to make. If you're new here, welcome to Afro-Korean Cartel Stories. Subscribe and hit that notification button is free. Before you keep watching, you are going love and want to follow this one all the way through. To understand how she ended up standing frozen by that hall gate, you have to look back at the woman she used to be. 7 years ago, Naliaka was 27 and finishing her final clinical rotation in nursing school. That was when Alex walked into her life. He was charming, full of huge dreams, and completely broke. But he was broke in that special way of a man who is absolutely sure he will be rich tomorrow. Naliaka fell for his bright confidence. She wanted to build a beautiful future together, so she willingly became his foundation. When a landlord rejected his application, she put her own name and good credit on the lease. When he needed money for expensive business school tests, she picked up double shifts at the hospital to cover the fees. Her days were a tiring blur of alarms, hospital scrubs, and emergency rooms. Yet, no matter how much her feet ached, she always came home and stood at the stove to make his favorite meals. In return, Alex would pull her close, look into her tired eyes, and whisper that she was his rock. He swore she was the only reason he kept pushing forward. Those sweet words kept her going. But then, his luck finally changed. He landed a high-paying job at a top finance firm. Almost overnight, his entire world shifted. Promotions rolled in. He bought tailored suits and started going to weekend networking retreats and fancy dinners. Naliaka was never asked to come along. He always made quick excuses, saying the events were boring or that she needed her rest after the hospital. The distance between them grew until it felt like they lived in two completely different worlds. Then came the day it all ended. There was no loud argument, no counseling, and no real conversation. He just stood in the hallway of the apartment she had helped pay for, looking at her like she was a stranger. He handed her back her ring and told her she just did not match the bright, fast life he was building anymore. Just like that, he erased years of her love and hard work, leaving her alone with nothing but the echo of his footsteps. To understand why Naliaka did not fight back right away, you have to look at her mother, Celestine. After Naliaka's father became very sick and passed away, Celestine raised her 2 daughters alone. Without ever asking what they wanted, she gave each girl a strict role to play in the family. Naliaka became the strong one. She was the capable daughter who fixed problems, paid the bills, and never needed a shoulder to cry on. Her younger sister, Amara, was the sensitive one. Amara was artistic and delicate, the golden child who always required protection, extra money, and endless forgiveness. Over the years, Naliaka learned a cruel lesson. Her own feelings did not matter as much as Amara's comfort. Naliaka was treated like a human shield, expected to take the heavy hits so her sister would never have to struggle. This painful family setup became crystal clear during a quiet Sunday dinner at their mother's house, months before the new wedding was even announced. Amara had stepped into the living room, leaving her phone sitting face up on the kitchen counter. Suddenly, the screen lit up with a new text message. Naliaka happened to glance down and saw a name she knew all too well, Alex. Her heart skipped a beat. She leaned closer and read the short conversation on the screen. Alex had written that he was so tired of Naliaka. He complained that she was exhausting and always working at the hospital. Amara's reply was a punch straight to the gut. She had typed back, "I know. She just doesn't know how to be a real woman." Anyone else would have screamed. Another woman might have smashed the phone against the wall or marched into the next room to demand answers. But Naliaka did not make a single sound. She gently put the phone back down in the exact spot she had found it. She quietly picked up her purse, walked out the front door, and got into her car. She drove away in complete silence. She did not cry, and she did not call her mother to complain. She simply swallowed the deep heartbreak whole because her entire life had trained her to follow one unbreakable rule. Her pain was never allowed to be the priority. Miles away from Naliaka's quiet heartbreak, Du Hyunjae sat in the back of his sleek black car. He stared down at a glossy piece of thick paper. It was a wedding program, and just hours ago, it had been sitting at the bottom of his office trash can. Hyunjae was a man who understood value. For months, Alex had been trying to get him to invest in a large commercial building project. Alex was eager and desperate to impress. But Hyunjae had looked at the math and said no every single time. The numbers simply did not make sense. Still, Alex refused to give up. He kept sending shiny folders and polite emails, trying to build a fake friendship with a man who controlled the city's dangerous underground. 3 weeks ago, Alex mailed a wedding invitation to his entire business network to show off his new life. Inside the expensive envelope was a detailed booklet with photos and family stories. Hyunjae had tossed it away without a second thought. But his sharp assistant had pulled it out of the trash and pointed to a specific page. There, printed neatly under the section for the bride's family, were the words, Amara Akying, sister of Naliaka Akying. Hyunjae had frozen. Naliaka Akying. He knew that name. It was burned into his memory alongside the smell of hospital bleach and the harsh glare of emergency room lights. He immediately opened his laptop and searched her name. The public records told a silent, ugly story. He found an old marriage license linking her to Alex, followed by a quick divorce filing. He remembered a strong woman standing over his bleeding body, shouting fierce orders when the other doctors wanted to let him die. She had fought for a stranger's life with everything she had. Now, he realized the man who had been begging for his money was publicly destroying the very woman who had saved his life. Hyunjae slowly closed his laptop. The sharp snap echoed in the quiet room. He did not care about the real estate deal, and he certainly did not care about Alex. He looked up, tapped the dark glass partition, and told his driver to change the route. He was going to a wedding. The ceremony finally came to an end. As the guests stood up to clap for the new couple, Naliaka quietly stood up too. She smoothed the soft fabric of her dark teal green dress, took one last look at the floral arch, and said a silent goodbye to the future she used to believe in. She had survived the worst of it. Now, she just needed to slip away to the parking lot and go home. She walked quickly away from the crowd, heading toward the dark path. The loud music and laughter faded behind her. She was almost safe. Naliaka Akying. A low, steady voice stopped her right at the edge of the hall gate. He said her full name like it actually mattered, like she was someone truly important. Naliaka turned around. A man stood under the warm glow of the string lights. He wore a perfect black suit, his posture tall and controlled, with his hands resting easily in his pockets. He did not smile, but his dark eyes were locked directly onto hers. "I remember the emergency room," he said quietly. "You fought for me when no one else would. When everyone else in that room wanted to let me go, you refused." He did not crowd her space, but his presence was heavy and powerful. "I have not forgotten." He did not ask her for anything in return. He did not offer a long explanation about how he had found her or why he was really at her sister's wedding. Instead, he simply reached into his jacket, pulled out a crisp business card, and held it out to her. "You are not alone anymore," he said. Naliaka slowly reached out and took the card. Before she could even find the words to ask what he meant, he turned around. He walked calmly back toward the bright lights of the reception, moving through the shadows as if nothing had happened at all. Naliaka was left standing completely by herself at the hall gate. She listened to the distant sound of glasses clinking and jazz music playing. She looked down at the small piece of paper in her hand. It felt heavy against her palm, like a dangerous, powerful question that she simply did not know how to answer yet. Naliaka slipped the crisp business card into her small purse and forced herself to walk back inside. The reception tent was loud with bright laughter, clinking glasses, and upbeat music. She navigated through the crowd and finally found her assigned seat at the very back of the room. Her table was shoved into a dim corner right next to the giant speakers. There were no family members sitting nearby. She had no +1 to keep her company. It was just Naliaka, an empty chair, and a neat centerpiece of white flowers. She sat down, carefully smoothed her dark teal-green dress, and began the quiet, exhausting performance of pretending to be perfectly fine. A few minutes later, Amara glided past the table. The new bride looked glowing and flawless in her white gown. Amara paused and placed a gentle hand on Naliaka's shoulder. "I am so glad you came," Amara said, her voice dripping with sweet, fake warmth. "It really means everything to me." But Naliaka could see her sister's eyes. They were cold and calculating, checking to make sure Naliaka was behaving and staying in her proper place. Naliaka simply nodded, and Amara floated away to greet her wealthy new friends. Soon after, their mother, Celestine, marched over. She held a crystal glass of champagne and wore a tight, nervous frown. Celestine leaned down close to Naliaka's ear so no one else could hear. "People are starting to stare at you," Celestine whispered sharply. "They are noticing that you are sitting all by yourself in the corner. It really does not look good for a family. You need to look happy." Naliaka stared straight ahead at the white flowers on the table. A bitter, heavy thought burned in her mind. "I have been making myself completely invisible my entire life, just so this family looks whole and perfect. And now you're asking me to do it even better." But she did not say a single word of that out loud. Arguing would only cause a scene, and Naliaka was trained to keep the peace at all costs. Instead, she looked up at her mother and gave a polite, agreeable nod. She even forced a warm, convincing smile onto her face. She did not fight back. She was extraordinary at this silent suffering. After all, she had been practicing this exact routine since she was 9 years old. Celestine was just taking a deep breath to deliver another sharp lecture about family duty when a tall shadow fell across the small table. Naliaka looked up. Du Hyunjae stood there, his sharp black suit cutting a bold line through the soft, pastel colors of the wedding reception. He did not look like an ordinary guest. He looked like a man who owned the room. "Excuse me," Hyunjae said. His voice was very polite, but it carried a quiet, absolute authority that made Celestine snap her mouth shut. He gave a brief, respectful nod to Naliaka's mother. "I am Du Hyunjae. If you do not mind, I would like to borrow your daughter for a dance." He asked for permission, but his calm, powerful presence made it completely impossible for Celestine to say no. She simply blinked, suddenly speechless, and gave a weak nod. Hyunjae turned his dark eyes to Naliaka and slowly held out his hand. Naliaka froze. She knew that every guest nearby was watching them. She hesitated just long enough for the silence to stretch, making sure everyone saw the exact moment the forgotten sister was chosen. Then, she took a breath, reached out, and placed her hand in his. He gently led her out of the dark corner and straight into the center of the dance floor. As the slow jazz music washed over them, he put his hand on her waist. He did not hold her lightly, like she was fragile and about to break. He held her firmly, like she was deeply valuable and worth protecting. "You do not owe these people your presence," he said, his voice so low that only she could hear it over the music. Naliaka looked up at his calm, serious face. "Then why are you still here?" she asked softly. Fiancé held her gaze without blinking. "Because you are." It was the most devastating, wonderful thing anyone had said to her in years. Across the room, Alex stopped talking mid-sentence. He stared at the dance floor, his jaw tight with sudden, helpless anger. Beside him, Amara's bright, fake smile completely vanished. They watched as the woman they had cruelly thrown away suddenly became the most important person in the room. Every guest could feel the heavy shift in power, even if they could not explain why. The slow jazz song faded to an end. Hyunjae respectfully let go of Naliaka's hand, gave her a brief nod, and stepped back into the crowd. Naliaka walked back to her small table in the corner. Her heart was beating fast, but her face remained perfectly calm. She sat down and immediately pulled her cell phone out of her purse. She just needed to look busy so her family would not try to talk to her. The screen lit up with a new notification. It was a financial alert from her bank. She almost swiped it away. She thought it was probably just a standard warning or an advertisement. But a strange, uneasy feeling in her stomach made her tap the screen. The alert read, "New account opened in your name." Naliaka frowned. She quickly opened her credit monitoring app and typed in her password. As the main page loaded, her blood ran completely cold. She started to scroll through the long list of active accounts. There were 3 new credit cards she had never applied for, all completely maxed out. There was a giant bank loan for a luxury car she had never even driven. There was a personal line of credit. And worst of all, there was a massive cash withdrawal taken out against the apartment she had co-signed for Alex years ago, the exact same apartment he still lived in today. She stared at the bright screen in pure horror. The total amount of fake debt was over $100,000. Every single account had been secretly opened in the last 2 years. Every legal document had been signed with her name, using handwriting that was definitely not hers. The awful truth hit her like a heavy physical punch. Alex did not just break her heart and walk away. He had secretly built his shiny new life with Amara by stealing Naliaka's identity. The fancy wedding, the perfect white flowers, the expensive food, he had paid for all of it by completely destroying her financial future. Naliaka stood up. She did not say a single word to anyone. She did not look for her mother, and she did not say goodbye. She just turned around and walked away. She walked right past the beautiful fairy lights, the happy dancing guests, and the loud music. She stepped out into the cool, dark parking lot. She got inside her car, locked the doors, and sat in the heavy silence. Then, with a perfectly steady hand, she pulled out Hyunji's crisp business card and dialed the number. Hyunjae arrived at the quiet 24-hour diner in less than 20 minutes. He slid into the worn booth across from Naliaka. Under the harsh, bright fluorescent lights, his expensive black suit looked entirely out of place, but his calm face gave away nothing. Naliaka did not say a word. She just unlocked her phone and slid it across the sticky table. He picked it up and read through the long screens of stolen money, maxed-out credit cards, and forged signatures. He looked at every single line of fake debt in complete silence. His expression did not change at all. Finally, he set the phone down gently. "What do you want to do about this?" he asked. Naliaka looked down at her hands. Her entire life, she had been told to take the high road, to forgive, and to keep the peace. But the words that came out of her mouth surprised even her. "I want him to have nothing left," she said. Her voice was cold, angry, and perfectly steady. Hyunjae simply nodded. He reached into his jacket and slid a new, clean business card across the table. It belonged to a woman named Christine, a forensic accountant who had spent 15 years helping victims of financial abuse. "She is the best," Hyunjae said. Then he leaned forward, his dark eyes locking onto hers. "But before you take this step, there is something you need to know about me." He did not hide who he was. In a quiet, even voice, he told her the complete truth. He told her about his deep ties to organized crime, his very dangerous business partners, and the dark decisions he had made that could never be undone. He explained that his world came with real, heavy risks for anyone who stood near him. "I am telling you this because you deserve to make a clear choice," he said. "I could easily make Alex lose everything. I could erase this problem for you tonight. But I will not do that." Naliaka frowned slightly. "Why not?" "Because if I fix this for you, you will feel like you owe me," Hyunjae replied. "And I do not want that. I do not want to rescue you. I want to stand right beside you while you burn his world down yourself." Monday morning arrived with bright, cold sunlight. Naliaka walked into a tall glass tower in the busy financial district. She wore the exact same calm, elegant composure she had worn to the hall wedding just days before. But this time, her quiet strength belonged entirely to her, not to her family's comfort. She rode the elevator up to the 14th floor and walked into Christine's quiet office. The meeting lasted for 2 long, difficult hours. They went through every fake bank statement, every hidden loan, and every forged signature. By the time Naliaka finally stood up to leave, she had signed the official paperwork to authorize criminal fraud charges against Alex. She had reported the stolen money to all 3 major credit bureaus, and she had completely frozen her credit so he could never open another account in her name. When she stepped back outside into the cool morning air, she took a deep breath. She felt something strange and light in her chest, a feeling she could not immediately name. It took her walking a full city block to finally recognize what it was. She was not afraid. The obedient woman who had forced herself to clap while her sister married her ex-fiancé was completely gone. In her place stood someone who knew exactly what had been done to her, exactly who was to blame, and exactly how she was going to tear his stolen life apart. For the first time in her life, she did not feel the need to call her mother. She did not send a polite, forgiving text to Amara. Instead, she opened her phone, found Do Hyunji's number, and typed a simple, 3-word message. "It is done." She hit send and kept walking down the busy sidewalk. Less than a minute later, her phone buzzed softly in her hand. She looked down at the bright screen and read his reply. "I know. I am proud of you." Naliaka smiled. It was a small, genuine smile that finally reached her dark eyes. She slipped the phone safely into her purse, straightened her jacket, and walked confidently toward everything that came next. And that's a wrap on today's story. If this one pulled at something in your chest, then let us know in the comments. Tell us your favorite moment and where you're watching from. And if you're new here, welcome. Subscribe so you never miss a story. Like this video so more people find it. We'll see you in the next one. Please support by subscribing and commenting what you enjoyed about the story and where you're watching from.